My name is Lorraine Whitmore, and I watched my daughter climb onto the roof of our garage with a GoPro strapped to her head as if the laws of gravity didn't apply to her anymore. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Grace's Truth. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. She was 23. Barely out of college, living in the guest house behind our home and filming herself jumping off the garage for what she called a shock intro. She landed in a pile of half-flattened cardboard boxes with a loud thud, then burst into laughter. Her friends clapped. One of them held up a phone recording her reaction. Another yelled, "That's the one that's going viral." I stood at the kitchen window, watching. Again. My tea had gone cold. My heart had gone colder. This wasn't the first stunt, not even close. I used to run outside shouting at her to stop. I used to cry, beg, try to reason with her. Now I just stood still. Because when your child is determined to destroy themselves, one like at a time, panic becomes pointless. You learn to freeze. You learn to go quiet. And in that quiet, I heard it, the chant of a generation raised on attention as currency. Post it, she did. By dinner, the clip had over 400,000 views. She didn't come into the house. She never did anymore. We used to eat together even after her father died. Now it was just the hum of my refrigerator and the constant glow of her ring light bleeding through the curtain of her window. I wish I could say I didn't see this coming. But Emma had always craved an audience. As a child, she would stand in the middle of the grocery store and sing at the top of her lungs. Strangers smiled. I'd smile too nervously, unsure if it was brilliance or a red flag. But after Mark died, it changed. It wasn't playful anymore. It became frantic, performative. There was something hollow in her eyes that made every laugh feel like a scream wearing makeup. The first time she went viral was 2 years ago. She filmed herself pretending to be lost at a mall, asking strangers bizarre questions like, "Can you help me find my time machine?" It was absurd, harmless, maybe even creative. I tried to be supportive. But that was just the beginning. The content got darker, riskier. Every week became a new way to cheat death or humiliate herself. One time she filmed herself getting fired from a fake job she didn't have. Another time she pretended to faint in a crowded parking lot. She called them social experiments. I called them cries for help. "Mom, it's a brand," she said when I confronted her last month. "People love chaos. If you don't get that, it's because you've never mattered to anyone outside this house." That one stung, because I had mattered to my students, to my husband, and once to her. But she didn't see me anymore. She only saw views. That night, after the garage jump, I left her a plate of food on the porch of her guest house like I always did. She never said thank you. The plate was usually back in my sink by morning, empty, sometimes broken, depending on her mood. I couldn't stop caring for her, but I couldn't stop hurting either. And the worst part, a tiny voice inside me wondered if I'd failed her. Not just as a mother, but as a person. Had I made her feel invisible? Had I buried her under my grief after Mark died? Was this her way of screaming loud enough to finally be seen? I sat on the couch scrolling through her newest post. The comments ranged from "Queen of Chaos" to "This girl is insane, I love it." Some asked if she was okay. Most just encouraged more. My hand trembled as I set the phone down. I wanted to call her, knock on her door, beg her to stop before she did something irreversible. But I didn't. Not that night. Because something inside me shifted as I read one particular comment. "She's just doing what her mom was too scared to do live." I stared at that comment for a long time. They didn't know me. They didn't know the nights I spent grading papers until my fingers cramped just so Emma could have piano lessons. They didn't know I once fought tooth and nail to keep our house after Mark's funeral. They didn't know I gave up dating travel and even early retirement for her. But maybe Emma didn't know either. And maybe I hadn't told her. Not with words. Not in the way she would understand broadcasted exaggerated screaming through the screen, because I believed that being there silently, always showing up, was enough. But to a daughter chasing fame like its oxygen, silence is nothing. So I sat in the dark, alone, wondering if I had already lost her. Not to drugs, not to some tragic accident, but to the faceless applause of strangers. And I knew then that if I wanted to bring her back, I'd have to fight the very thing she worshipped. Not with anger, not with shame, but with truth. And the truth was, she was jumping off more than rooftops. She was jumping away from me. Emma didn't worship idols made of gold or stone. She worshipped pixels, subscribers, shares, algorithms that decided if she was lovable that day or not. And she treated every new post like a sermon. Her followers weren't fans, they were proof. Proof that she mattered more than me. Proof that my voice, my values, my warnings all belonged to a different century. When Emma was 15, she used to sleep with her phone under her pillow. Not for texting, not for calls, for the rush of seeing her TikToks blow up while she dreamed. If she woke up to under 1,000 Oscars likes, her mood darkened like a storm cloud. But if something popped, she'd float into the kitchen like she had just won a Nobel Prize. I tried to talk to her, gently at first. "Sweetheart, this isn't real love," I said one morning while making her oatmeal. "It's performance. And when the show ends, you'll still be you." She rolled her eyes. "Exactly. And they love who I am. Not like you, always trying to change me." I stood still, wooden spoon in hand, heart sinking. It wasn't that I wanted to change her. I just wanted her safe, whole, grounded. But somewhere along the way, my care started sounding like criticism to her. And her need for fame, that burning hunger for relevance, became more important than anything else. Even her dignity, even me. She started filming everything. Family dinners, boring. But filming me getting frustrated over her phone usage. Boom. Instant meme, she laughed. One Thanksgiving, I caught her hiding a camera in the napkin holder. She was hoping to film a family meltdown and post it with the caption, "Boomers are wild." I found out when her cousin, my niece, sent me the video. It had over 300,000 views. Emma never asked if it hurt. She just shrugged. "They eat this stuff up, Mom." What exactly were they eating? Our privacy, our shame. I began to fear my own daughter's lens more than I feared strangers, because she didn't see us as people anymore. She saw us as characters. And to characters she owed nothing. Sometimes she'd upload videos of me ranting, tiny clips taken out of context where I was raising my voice or sighing deeply. Her captions mocked me. "Boomer mom thinks I'm in a cult of followers," or "She still thinks books matter, LOL. It wasn't just embarrassing, it was a betrayal. But what hurt most wasn't what she posted, it was the comments. People called me controlling, bitter, jealous of her freedom. One person said, "It's moms like this who ruin their kids' potential. She's just scared of her daughter's power." Power. What kind of power was this? The power to fall off a roof and get cheered. The power to humiliate her own mother in exchange for hearts and emojis. No one saw the sleepless nights, the panic attacks I had when her phone went silent for hours, and I didn't know if she was in trouble or just filming another fake emergency. No one saw me sitting on her bed holding the stuffed rabbit she'd slept with as a child, wondering if that sweet little girl was gone for good. But Emma wasn't gone. Not entirely. Sometimes she'd forget to lock her door. I'd peek in and see her sitting cross-legged editing on her laptop, dark circles under her eyes. Her hands trembled from too much caffeine. Her expression was empty. Not joyful, not excited, just wired, drained, as if she was sprinting on a treadmill and didn't know how to stop. Once I saw her crying quietly in the dark. No cameras, no lights. Just her curled up against the wall like she was hiding from herself. I stood there frozen, wanting to walk in to hold her, but I didn't. I was scared she'd scream, accuse me of spying, post it. So I closed the door. Later that week, she posted a vlog titled, "What It's Like to Have a Toxic Mom." It was edited beautifully, lighting music, a soft piano track that made her seem vulnerable and wise. She said, I never believed in her, that I wanted her to live a life of fear, that I used grief as a weapon. I watched it twice, not because I doubted myself, because I wanted to see if there was any trace of the daughter I raised, the one who used to write poetry and leave love notes under my pillow. There wasn't. All that remained was a brand. A well-oiled machine made of filters, pain, and performance. She didn't care that I saw it. In fact, I think she wanted me to punish me, because deep down she thought I had held her back. That my lectures, my cautious ways, my refusal to let her film everything had stolen her future. And she resented me for every quiet, reasonable boundary I tried to set. In her eyes, I wasn't a protector. I was the villain in the story she needed to sell. So I stopped talking. I stopped knocking. I stopped begging. Because nothing I said could compete with the roar of her audience. But I never stopped watching. Not because I approved, but because I was terrified. Terrified of what she might do next. Terrified that one day she wouldn't get back up after the next stunt. And most terrifying of all, that she wouldn't care. Because when the screen becomes your god, even death can look like a good ending. As long as it gets enough views. The first time she truly scared me, I thought she was dead. It was a Sunday afternoon. The wind was heavy with summer dust, and I was cleaning out the spice cabinet, a small act of reclaiming normalcy in a house that had become too quiet. My phone buzzed. A neighbor sent me a link. Just one sentence. Is this Emma? I clicked. The video started with a shaky camera and Emma's laughing voice. She was standing in the middle of a busy intersection, fake blood smeared across her shirt, pretending to be hit by a car. A white sedan skidded, swerved, and nearly hit an actual pedestrian who screamed out loud. People ran. Someone cried. Sirens blared. And Emma, she turned to the camera and shouted, "Gotcha!" It wasn't just a prank. It was a violation. A manipulation of people's most human instinct to help. The video cut to her giggling in a parking lot, joking about how everyone's so dramatic, and we just saved someone from being boring today. I dropped the phone. My legs collapsed beneath me like the breath had been knocked from my chest. I remember crawling toward the wall, back pressed against the cold tile, whispering her name. Over and over. Like a prayer. Like a curse. I didn't know what was worse, that she had done it, or that I'd only found out because someone else showed me. I tried to call her. No answer. I texted her, "Emma, what were you thinking?" She replied 3 hours later, "Relax, I'm fine. The video's blowing up. 2.4 million in 2 hours. No apology, no acknowledgement, just numbers, metrics, bragging rights." And the worst part, she sounded triumphant. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept imagining the what-ifs. What if someone had a heart condition and collapsed from the shock? What if the driver had panicked and hit a real person? What if she had been hit? What if that had been the last video she ever made? The police called me the next day. Apparently, someone filed a report. An officer wanted to speak with her. I was mortified, ashamed, but not surprised. I gave them her number, knowing full well she'd charm her way out of it or cry on camera and claim mental health struggles for sympathy. She always had an angle. When she finally came home, not to apologize but to grab a new hoodie and her ring light, I tried to stop her at the door. "Emma, we need to talk." She looked through me. Not at me, through me. About what she said. How you hate everything I do. How nothing I create is good enough for you. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there and whispered, "You scared me. You scared a lot of people." She paused. For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Regret, maybe. Or doubt. But it vanished. "You're just scared I'm going to be something you can't control," she said. "That I'll go farther than you ever dreamed. That I'll matter. Mattering." That word again. As if love and value were something you earned by manipulating others and monetizing fear. "I don't want to control you," I said. "I want you safe. That's all." "You want me boring," she snapped. "Like you." And then she left. She slammed the door behind her so hard the picture of her as a child, the one in the ballet tutu smiling with missing front teeth, fell off the wall. The glass shattered. I didn't pick it up. I just stood there listening to her car speed off, wondering when exactly my child turned into a stranger who used her own mother as a prop for internet fame. It wasn't just Emma who scared me. It was the world she'd built for herself, a world where morality had no place and shock was more valuable than sincerity. A world where pain was currency. I thought back to when she was 6. She used to sit on my lap while I read Charlotte's Web to her. She cried when Charlotte died, sobbed actually, and clutched my sleeve asking, "Why do good things have to end, Mommy?" I told her because they're real, sweetheart, and real things don't last forever. Now I wondered if I'd been wrong, because in her world, nothing real ever begins. Every smile is staged, every emotion scripted, every tragedy a potential trend. And I, her mother, the woman who once kissed her scraped knees and taught her how to braid her hair, I had become nothing more than content. A passive, outdated obstacle in the way of her next viral moment. That week, I overheard her planning her next stunt on a call. "Yeah, I'm gonna fake a seizure in the bookstore," she said casually. "Then when someone calls an ambulance, I'll jump up and scream, 'Just kidding.'" Classic shock comedy. It'll blow up. I felt sick. I wanted to scream, shake her, drag her into reality. But what would that do? I couldn't outshout the followers in her head. And that terrified me more than anything else. Because it meant I wasn't just losing her. I was already gone. She hates that I'm ordinary. She's never said it directly, but I see it in her eyes every time I wear my simple cardigans, every time I serve up the same roast chicken recipe I've made since she was a child, every time I suggest she maybe take a break from her phone for a day. I'm not glamorous. I've never been edgy or trend savvy. I shop with coupons. I knit scarves in the winter. I cry during reruns of Little House on the Prairie. To her, I'm a relic, a woman content with anonymity. That disgusts her. Because Emma believes that if no one's watching, you don't exist. Once, when she was 16, I caught her crying after school. Her cheeks were red and streaked with mascara. I wrapped her in a blanket, sat her down, and asked what happened. "They all laughed at me," she sobbed. "They said I'm basic. That I'm just like my mom." She said it like a curse. Like being compared to me was a death sentence. At the time, I didn't react. I just held her. But later that night, in the quiet of my room, I let that sentence slice me open. Just like she had intended. Because even then, she couldn't stand the idea of being small, unseen. And I, in all my simplicity, reminded her of everything she feared becoming. In her world, to be ordinary was to be invisible. And maybe she already thought I was. But what she never understood was that I chose this life. I chose the quiet house, the steady job, the garden I tend to every spring. I chose to build something stable, something solid after a childhood where everything was unpredictable. Emma doesn't know that I grew up in chaos. A father who drank, a mother who disappeared for days, a house where no one listened unless you screamed. So I built the opposite. I raised Emma on bedtime stories, calm voices, and a home where love wasn't earned by performing. But she craved more. When she was little, she used to dance in the living room, not just for me, but for the mirror. Always the mirror. As if her own reflection was more important than my clapping hands. I remember once telling her, "You don't have to perform, sweetheart. I love you just sitting still." She looked confused. Genuinely confused. Like I'd said something in a language she couldn't translate. And now, years later, that confusion had turned into resentment. After one of her viral videos, a staged breakup prank in a supermarket, she came home giddy with excitement. "It's blowing up, Mom. You should have seen this lady's face. She thought I was being abused. So dramatic. It's hilarious." I didn't laugh. I couldn't. Instead, I said softly, "Do you ever think about the people you're using for these videos? The strangers." She scoffed. "God, you're so predictable. I knew you'd say that. You want everyone to live like it's 1985. Guess what? People love drama." They love me. I'm not going to be like you. Wasting away in a quiet house pretending that's enough. There it was. The venom wrapped in her usual smirk. I didn't respond. Not because I agreed, but because I realized something in that moment. She didn't hate my life. She feared it. Because if the noise ever stopped, if the followers ever vanished, if the camera ever cracked, she'd be left with herself. And that terrified her. So she lashed out. The next morning, I found a post on her Instagram story. It was a boomerang of her sipping coffee captioned, "Spending time with my judgmental mother who thinks TikTok is the devil. Pray for me." It had laughing emojis, but I wasn't laughing. Neither were the people who messaged her in agreement, strangers piling on with comments like, "She's just jealous of your success," and "Cut the negativity out of your life, girl." Negativity. That's what she called my love, my worry, my desperate attempts to keep her from walking off a digital cliff. I started to pull away, not because I gave up, but because I was losing my grip. She didn't want saving, she wanted an audience, and I wasn't playing along. One night we sat on opposite ends of the couch, a rare moment when she wasn't filming or editing. I turned to her, trying one last time. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Emma. You're enough without the noise." She looked at me, really looked for the first time in weeks. Then she said, "No, Mom. You were enough. I want more." She stood and walked away. And I realized something I had tried not to admit for a long time. My daughter doesn't just resent me for holding her back. She resents me for surviving without being seen. Because in her world, invisibility is worse than death. My late husband would have been horrified. Mark was the kind of man who wore silence like armor, steady, composed, but deeply affectionate in his own quiet way. When Emma was born, he held her like she was made of porcelain, whispering promises into her tiny ear. "You'll never be without love. Never." He was the balance to my worry, the calm to Emma's chaos. And when he died, everything broke. Emma was 12. Just old enough to remember everything, just young enough to believe someone had to be blamed. And since cancer doesn't take responsibility, she blamed me. At first, it was subtle. She pulled away from me, spent more time in her room, stopped asking me to braid her hair at night. I thought it was grief. I told myself it was normal. But then the anger came. She started rolling her eyes at everything I said, mocking my tone, mimicking my voice to get laughs at family dinners. When I asked her why she was acting out, she screamed, "Because you let him die." I didn't even cry. I couldn't. I just sat there holding the casserole dish I had just pulled from the oven, realizing that motherhood was no protection from accusation. She never said sorry, and I never asked her to, because I understood what it was like to scream at the sky when it doesn't answer. But I always thought, or at least hoped, that the storm would pass. It didn't. It transformed. Emma's grief curdled into ambition. A need to prove something, to become someone so big, so loud, so famous that death itself wouldn't dare come for her the way it came for Mark. She started watching vloggers obsessively, teenagers who filmed their daily lives, who smiled for the camera, even when everything around them was falling apart. She said she wanted to be known, that people online understood her better than anyone in this house. I tried to bring her back. I offered therapy. She refused. I suggested journaling. She posted the pages on Instagram. She didn't want healing. She wanted attention. I remember sitting by her door late at night listening to her record voiceovers. She'd pretend to cry on camera, telling stories about toxic family dynamics and overcoming narcissistic parenting. She borrowed terms she didn't understand and twisted them into narratives that suited her aesthetic. Mark would have shut it down. He was gentle but firm. He had a way of speaking to Emma that got through a look, a sentence, and she'd melt into his chest like a child again. She trusted him, worshipped him. Sometimes I wonder if that's why she turned on me. Because he died and I didn't. And I wasn't enough. When Emma started her channel, she dedicated her first video to him. It was a slideshow of pictures, her as a toddler on his shoulders, their matching flannel shirts, a clip of him lifting her into the air while she squealed. The caption read, "For the man who believed in me before anyone else did." I watched it late at night, tears rolling down my cheeks. I wasn't even mentioned. Not once. She had rewritten our family history with herself as the star mark, as the saint, and me as the ghost. The ghost who cooked meals, folded laundry, sat through parent-teacher conferences, but somehow faded in every frame. And still I supported her quietly. When she needed new equipment, I helped her research cameras. When her first check from YouTube came in, I took her out to dinner to celebrate. But nothing I did ever counted. She told her followers she'd done it alone. I was never part of the story, not unless she needed a villain. I once found an old camcorder in the attic. It had footage from when Emma was little, her first ballet recital, her winning a spelling bee, Mark teaching her to ride a bike. I watched it all hunched over on the floor, sobbing, because in those videos she looked at me like I was her entire world. Now, she won't even make eye contact unless there's a lens between us. If Mark were alive, I think he'd take her phone and throw it in the lake. Not out of anger, but out of love. Because he believed in real connection, in presence, in earning people's trust instead of mining it for content. And maybe, just maybe, she'd listen to him. But he's not here, just me. The ghost in her narrative. The mother she's rewritten into a cautionary tale. And I don't know how to pull her back from a world where fame means more than family, and likes feel more real than love. She posted something unforgivable. It was early on a Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky still held onto the last shades of gray from the night before. I was folding laundry, letting the quiet of the house settle in when my phone buzzed. It was a message from a former colleague. "Lorraine, is this about you?" She attached a link. I opened it without hesitation, and for a moment I didn't understand what I was seeing. The video opened with a somber piano track. Emma was sitting on her bed, backlit for dramatic effect, eyes slightly red. The title on the screen read, "My Childhood with a Mentally Ill Parent." My stomach turned cold. She began to speak in that slow, trembling voice she always used when trying to sound vulnerable online. Soft enough to make viewers lean in, but clear enough to sound practiced, rehearsed. She talked about growing up in a house full of fear, about emotional manipulation, and never knowing which version of my mom I'd get that day. She talked about how I used to hide in closets to cry, and how no child should be burdened with a parent's breakdowns. She said she forgave me, but only after years of therapy. She never used my name, but she didn't need to. She showed documents, hospital intake forms, a page from a prescription record, one blurry scan of a wellness check form from nearly a decade ago when I'd checked myself into a hospital for exhaustion and anxiety 6 months after Mark's funeral. She blurred my name, but she left everything else intact. The dates, the medication, the location. I couldn't breathe. That visit had been private. A moment of quiet collapse I had chosen not to burden Emma with. I'd gone because I had to stay standing. I told her I was away visiting a cousin. I returned steadier, clearer, holding myself together for her. And she used it for content. She turned my lowest moment into a trending hashtag. The comments poured in. "Wow, your mom sounds toxic. So brave of you to share this. You should cut her off, Queen. Been there. Narc moms are the worst." I dropped my phone. Something inside me fractured. Not in the way it had when she pulled stunts or lied. This was different. This was a violation of the deepest kind, not just a betrayal of trust, but a betrayal of the truth itself. She wasn't just twisting facts. She was rewriting history to suit her narrative, to gain sympathy, to weaponize pain. And the cruelest part, some of it was true, just not in the way she framed it. Yes, I had suffered after Mark's death. Yes, I had struggled. Yes, I had checked myself in, scared of where my grief was leading. But I had done it for her. I had broken down privately so I could hold her publicly. And now she'd turned that privacy into spectacle. I paced the kitchen. My hands shook so badly I dropped a glass. It shattered against the tile, and the sound sent a shock through me. That's when I heard the front door open. Emma! She strolled in like nothing had happened, dressed in an oversized hoodie, sipping iced coffee from a plastic cup. Her phone was in her hand, and she was watching her own video on loop. "Oh, good you saw it," she said, almost smug. I stared at her. My voice caught somewhere between a whisper and a scream. Why? Why would you do that? She blinked, genuinely confused by my reaction. People need to hear these stories, Mom. It helps them. You told the world I was unstable. You were Mom. Don't deny it. You disappeared. You lied to me. I was trying to protect you. Emma rolled her eyes. You always say that. But guess what? I'm finally protecting myself. No, I said louder this time. You're monetizing me. You're dressing up my pain and selling it. You turn my healing into your content. She flinched, just for a moment. Then her face hardened. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. You had your silence. This is my turn. And just like that, she walked past me. No apology, no remorse. She disappeared into the guest house again, probably to film a follow-up video about confronting the past. I stood in the kitchen staring at the place where she had just stood. The echo of her words still hung in the air like smoke after a fire. You don't get to control the narrative anymore. She was right. She had taken the story from me, rewritten it, filmed it, uploaded it, and no matter what I said, her version would always reach more ears than mine. Because in her world, truth wasn't measured by accuracy. It was measured by engagement. I confronted her and she went live. I had spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying her video over and over in my mind. The images, the documents, her carefully curated sadness. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just sat in the dark, feeling the kind of humiliation that clings to your bones. By morning, I knew I couldn't let it go. I walked across the yard to the guest house. My heart pounded so hard it made my ears throb. I knocked once firmly. No answer. I knocked again. Finally, she opened the door, phone in hand, hair half-done, eyes rimmed in eyeliner. She looked annoyed. What she said. We need to talk, I said, my voice low, calm. About what? The video? Don't be so dramatic. I took a breath, steadying myself. You crossed a line. What you posted wasn't just cruel, it was dishonest. You made me look like a monster to people who don't know the truth. Emma laughed, a quick, sharp bark of disbelief. They know my truth. That's not the same, I snapped. The door was open, so I stepped inside. She followed me in, rolling her eyes. Wow, you're actually barging in. I should have filmed this. Maybe you should, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. Then your followers can see the other version of your story. She froze. Then slowly I saw the spark ignite behind her gaze, not of empathy, but of opportunity. Without a word, she turned her phone around, opened her live streaming app, and hit go live. Hey guys, she said sweetly to the camera. So, unexpected content today. My mom showed up. She's really upset about the video. So, I guess we're doing this. I stepped back. Emma turned it off. She didn't. Say hi, Mom, she said, aiming the camera at me. I said, turn it off. The comments began flooding in little floating hearts, emojis, and questions. Is this really your mom? Why is she so angry? Drama! Let her speak. I took a breath. If I walked away, I'd be confirming everything they already believed. That I was the villain. That I couldn't handle the truth. So I spoke. My name is Lorraine, I said, voice trembling. I'm Emma's mother. And yes, I was in a hospital for anxiety after my husband died. I went there because I loved my daughter, because I wanted to be better. For her. Not to be branded or exposed or edited into a caricature. Emma's expression flickered the faintest sign of discomfort. I went on. Raising a child through grief is hard. I did the best I could. I never hit her. I never screamed at her. I gave her food, warmth, home, stability. And now she's turned that life into a backdrop for views. Mom, Emma started, but I raised my hand. You want the truth. Here's the truth. You didn't post that video to heal. You posted it to trend. You fed your followers a version of me that only exists in cut-up clips and half-remembered moments. The chat went wild. Some people were sympathetic. Some weren't. One said, you're gaslighting your daughter on camera. This is exactly what she meant. Another wrote, wow. I feel bad for both of them. Emma shifted, clearly trying to decide if she should stay live or cut the feed. I'm done. I said, finally turning my back. You can tell whatever story you want, but I won't be part of it. As I stepped out the door, I heard her mumble to her viewers, "Sorry, guys. That was intense." The live ended, but the damage didn't. An hour later, my phone began to buzz nonstop. Former students, colleagues, people from church. Some defended me, others didn't. The gossip machine spun faster than I could keep up with. Emma stayed in the guest house. She didn't speak to me for 2 days. On the third day, I found a note under my door. It said, "You didn't have to humiliate me. I thought you'd understand." Understand? What was there to understand? That exploiting my pain and then dragging me into her circus was acceptable. That performing motherhood online gave her more control than receiving it in real life. I didn't write back. Instead, I walked into my room, opened my laptop, and created a private journal folder. And I began writing my version of the story. Not for fame, not for sympathy, but for truth. Because maybe she had the platform, but I still had a voice. And I wasn't going to let her drown me in hers anymore. The neighbor incident nearly broke me. It was late October, and the air had that brittle-edged dry leaves scraping across pavement, the early bite of approaching winter. I was in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup when I heard screaming from next door. Not the playful kind, the panicked kind. I ran to the window and saw Emma, camera in hand, standing in Mrs. Donnelly's backyard. Mrs. Donnelly is 83. She's lived in that house longer than I've been alive. Quiet kind, keeps a little garden of white roses in the spring and always bakes too much at Christmas. She's been my neighbor friend and a surrogate grandmother to Emma when she was younger. Now she was standing on her back porch shouting for Emma to leave. She was visibly shaken, gripping the wooden railing with white knuckles. And Emma, my daughter, was laughing. Laughing. I flew out the door without shoes, ran across the lawn, and slipped through the broken slats in the fence. The moment I reached them, Mrs. Donnelly nearly collapsed in my arms. She was hiding in my shed. The old woman gasped, popped out with that thing in her hands, said something about a ghost. I turned to Emma, who had the nerve to still be recording. "You're filming this," I shouted. "It was just a bit, Mom," she said. "Relax. It's called immersive horror. The fans love it." I snatched the phone out of her hand and stopped the recording. "You scared her half to death." Emma rolled her eyes. "She's fine. She has a heart condition. She could have said no if she didn't want to be involved. She didn't know you were in her shed. Emma, you trespassed, you hid, and then jumped out at her." That's when Mrs. Donnelly sank to the porch step, clutching her chest. I dropped beside her, grabbing her wrist, checking her pulse. It was fast, shallow, her breathing ragged. "Call an ambulance," I said. Emma hesitated. Now, only then did she pull out her phone and dial. I rode in the ambulance. Emma didn't. She said she had editing to do. At the hospital, I sat with Mrs. Donnelly as they monitored her vitals. The doctors said she'd be okay. It wasn't a heart attack, just a stress-induced episode. But she needed rest, calm, quiet. Emma had provided none of that. I stayed the night, held her hand, fed her spoonfuls of broth. The whole time a part of me burned with something I hadn't wanted to admit until then. Shame. Not just for Emma, but for myself. For the things I had excused. For the lines I had let blur. For not realizing sooner that my daughter no longer recognized the difference between entertainment and harm. When I got home the next morning, Emma was in the kitchen like nothing had happened, eating cereal and watching something on her phone. I said nothing. Just walked past her to the bathroom, washed my face, and cried for 10 solid minutes. That night, she posted the video anyway. She edited out Mrs. Donnelly's fear, cut out the ambulance, trimmed the confrontation. What remained was just enough to look edgy but safe. She titled it, "Scaring My Sweet Neighbor Gone Wrong." Gone wrong. No, that was the problem. To Emma, nothing ever really went wrong because it all fed the algorithm. Views exploded. The comments poured in. "OMG, she's a legend. That old lady low-key looked like she was in on it. New queen of spooky season." No one knew the truth. No one cared. I did. So I posted my own comment anonymously beneath the video. "You terrified a vulnerable woman who trusted you. This isn't content. It's cruelty." It was buried in seconds. drowned beneath emojis, memes, and blind praise. That night, I stood by her door gripping my old photo album, the one with pictures of her and Mrs. Donnelly baking cookies, making Halloween crafts, hugging in the snow. I wanted to show her, to remind her, but I couldn't bring myself to knock. Because deep down I wasn't sure if she'd remember. Not the moments, not the woman, not the cost. I made the call and she never forgave me. After the stunt with Mrs. Donnelly, after the lies, the edits, the utter disregard for basic decency, something inside me snapped. I had always protected Emma, defended her, explained her behavior away. She's just passionate, I'd say. She's creative. The internet's complicated. But I couldn't keep lying to myself. She wasn't just spiraling. She was endangering people. So I did the unthinkable. I reported her account. Anonymous tip. One paragraph. No malice. Just the truth-repeated use of real people without consent, dangerous behavior, a track record of borderline harassment. I sent links to 3 videos. That was all. I expected nothing. After all, the internet seems to reward chaos. But 2 weeks later, I heard the scream. I was in the garden pruning the chrysanthemums when her voice shot through the open-air, high-pitched guttural animal. What? I dropped the shears and ran toward the house. She was standing in the middle of the living room, barefoot, shaking phone in hand. They shut me down, she gasped. My account. My everything gone. She looked like she'd just been told someone died. In her world, something had. Her identity. What happened? I asked carefully. I got flagged. Repeated violations. Community safety or some crap. I've been banned for 60 days. 60 days. Her hands were trembling. Emma. Her head snapped up. Was it you? I flinched. What? Don't play dumb. You've been hovering, judging, making your little comments. You hated that I was successful. Successful, I said softly. You scared a sick old woman into a hospital visit. You posted my medical records. You've been using real pain like it's stage makeup. Her face turned red. You're jealous. Of what? Of me. Of the fact that people listen to me. That I made something. That I'm not some bitter widow hiding behind casseroles and scrapbooks. The words hit like fists, but I didn't step back. I stood my ground. I reported you, I said quietly. The silence was immediate. It rang louder than any scream. Her mouth dropped open like the air had been knocked from her lungs. You, yes. Why? Her voice broke, finally cracking under the weight of the truth. Because you've lost sight of who you are, Emma, of who raised you, of the girl who used to care. You're hurting people. You're hurting yourself. I didn't do it to punish you. I did it because I'm your mother. And I'd rather have you hate me and be alive than love me and fall to pieces on camera. She stared at me for a long time. Then something in her expression hardened. You never believed in me, she said. Not once. That's not true. She turned and walked out. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream again. She just disappeared into the yard, into the guest house, into whatever echo chamber she'd built for herself now that the platform was gone. That night, I sat on the porch for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't regret it. But I mourned. Not for the loss of her account. Not for the followers she'd cultivated like crops. I mourned the fracture. The moment the rope finally snapped between us. And I wondered, would she ever speak to me again? Would she ever realize I wasn't trying to destroy her, but trying to save what was left? Or would I always be in her story, the villain who killed her dream? I found the letters she wrote to Dad. It was almost by accident. The attic had needed cleaning for months, and after the fallout from the report, I found myself retreating into chores just to feel sane again. Scrubbing, sorting, organizing it gave my mind something to hold on to while the silence between me and Emma grew louder with each passing day. She hadn't spoken to me since I told her I filed the report. Not a word, not even a look. So I climbed up into the attic, half to distract myself, half to avoid the quiet. I started pulling down boxes, Christmas decorations, old lesson plans, boxes labeled Emma Elementary and Emma High School. Then I saw it. A worn floral shoebox. One of the old-fashioned kinds with fabric glued over the sides, a little ribbon on the top. It wasn't labeled. I didn't recognize it. I opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all written in Emma's handwriting, all addressed to one person. Dad? My hands trembled as I picked up the first one. The paper was wrinkled, folded in half with tiny flowers drawn in the corners. Dear Dad, today was stupid. Mom keeps saying everything will be okay, but I know it won't be. You're gone, and she doesn't even cry like I do. She just cleans and talks to herself. I hate how quiet the house is without you. My throat tightened. I picked up another, dated 2 years later. Dad, Mom won't let me start my channel. She says it's dangerous, but I think she just doesn't believe in me. If you were here, you'd understand. You always encouraged me. You said I had a spark. She just wants me to be invisible. And another, Dad, I know I pretend to be okay, but I'm not. Sometimes I feel like I'm screaming and no one hears me. I post videos and people laugh, but I'm not laughing. I just want to matter. I want people to know I exist. I wish you could see me now. I wish Mom could see me at all. I sank to the floor. She'd written to him for years. Pages of grief, loneliness, confusion, resentment. Some letters were full of rage, raw, furious, scrawled in capital letters with words like, "You left me and she doesn't care." Others were soft, like whispered prayers. "Please visit me in my dreams tonight." And, in every single one, a pattern. She missed him. She blamed me. And she never stopped searching for an audience, because she never felt seen by the person left behind. Me. I wanted to defend myself. To scream I was grieving too, I was trying my best. But the pages didn't care. The pages told the story she believed. And in a way, I understood. Her obsession with being visible wasn't just about fame. It was about proof. Proof that she existed. Proof that someone cared. Proof that the world hadn't moved on without her. I gathered the letters and brought them downstairs. I didn't read them all. Some felt too raw, too private. But I put them in a box and tied a ribbon around it. I placed it outside her door. No note, just the box. I wanted her to know that I'd read them, that I finally saw what she'd been trying to say, not through her videos, not through her anger, but through these fragile little pages that she had hidden from everyone. That night I couldn't sleep. I listened for movement, for the creak of the guest house door, for footsteps, but nothing came. The next morning the box was gone. No words, no texts, just absence. And yet, I felt something shift. A slow, almost imperceptible turning of the wheel. She hadn't thrown the box away. She hadn't brought it back. She had kept it. For now, that was enough. The final stunt almost cost her life. It was a Tuesday morning, bitter, cold, gray light filtering in through the windows. I was sweeping the back porch when I got the call. I didn't recognize the number. When I answered, the voice on the other end was young, shaky, unfamiliar. Hi, is this Emma Whitmore's mom? My heart stilled. Yes, this is Lorraine. There's been an accident. Your daughter, she fell. From the East Side train bridge. I think she was filming something. She's at County General now. I don't remember dropping the phone. I don't remember running to the car. I don't remember the drive, though. I must have hit every red light in the county. I only remember the parking lot, my knees giving out as I sprinted toward the ER entrance, and the sterile smell that clung to the hallway like old grief. They let me in because I was still listed as her emergency contact. She hadn't removed me. That meant something, didn't it? The nurse led me to a dim recovery room. Machines beeped in rhythm with my panic. And there she was, Emma, unconscious. A bruise blooming along her cheekbone, a white bandage wrapped around her wrist. IV hooked into the back of her hand, tubes beneath the blanket. I didn't know what to say, so I did the only thing I could. I sat beside her, and I waited. The nurse told me she had tried to jump from the old train bridge, the one that had been closed for years, the rusted one that teenagers dared each other to climb, and urban explorers used as a backdrop for gritty Instagram photos. Emma had gone out there with a camera, a tripod, and no safety gear. Alone. She had set the timer on her phone. Tried to leap onto a broken pile of foam blocks she'd dragged under the bridge earlier that morning, part of a dare challenge. She missed. The foam shifted. Her angle was off. She landed on the side of her ribs, rolled down the embankment, and blacked out. A jogger found her 20 minutes later. Her phone was still recording. They found it nearby, cracked, dirty screen still blinking in standby mode. I sat in that hospital room for hours, watched the machine count her breaths, watched the slow rise and fall of her chest. And I realized something with absolute clarity. If she had died, it would have been recorded. Her final moment, her gasp. Her fall, the silence afterward would have been content. Viewed, shared, edited, hashtagged, consumed. And I couldn't bear it. I reached over and gently pushed her hair away from her forehead the way I used to when she was sick. Feverish crying over math homework. Her skin was cold, pale. "Emma," I whispered. "Please come back." I didn't mean wake up. I meant come back to who she was before this obsession swallowed her whole. Back to the girl who used to write poems on napkins and tape them to my bedroom door. Back to the child who cried over lost baby birds and begged me to bury them in the garden with proper gravestones. Back to the young woman who once told me, if I ever get famous, I want it to be for something real. Tears ran down my face, silent and warm. "I was wrong," I whispered. "I should have seen you were hurting. I should have said something sooner. Held you tighter. Let you scream. Let you fall safely. Not like this." The lights flickered gently above us. The room was quiet, but for the beeping and the muffled sounds of shoes in the hallway. I reached for her hand. She didn't squeeze back. Not yet. But I held on anyway, because this time I wasn't going to let go. The silence after her fall was unbearable. Emma lay unconscious for 2 days. 48 hours of machines breathing rhythm into the room, of nurses walking in and out, of whispered conversations in hallways that always seemed to end in the words monitoring and wait and see. I didn't leave her side. I barely ate, barely spoke. I just sat brushing her hair back when it got tangled, adjusting her blanket, whispering things I was too afraid to say when she was awake. Sometimes I read to her. I found an old copy of Charlotte's Web in the hospital waiting room, the same book I used to read to her when she was small. She used to cry when Charlotte died. Back then she felt everything. Now I wasn't sure what she felt anymore. But I kept reading. I told her stories from her childhood, about the time she made a crown out of autumn leaves and declared herself queen of the backyard. About the night she stayed up trying to count stars and asked if her father could see them too from heaven. She didn't move. But sometimes I imagined her eyelids twitching, her fingers flinching. Maybe I was just desperate. Maybe I was holding on to hope the same way I used to hold her after a nightmare with everything I had. I thought about all the versions of her I had lost. The little girl with skinned knees. The teenager who wrote angsty poems but still left me a cupcake on my birthday. Even the young woman who used to light up when she got her first few hundred followers. She had disappeared piece by piece, traded for something louder, flashier, emptier. And somewhere along the way, I had stopped reaching. Not because I didn't love her, but because I was tired. Tired of being twisted into a villain. Tired of seeing my own face turned into a meme. Tired of feeling like I was competing with millions of strangers for a place in my daughter's heart. But in that hospital room, none of that mattered. All that mattered was her breath, steady and shallow, the beep of the machines, the soft scratch of my voice as I read from chapter 12. I remembered the last thing she ever said to me, "You never believed in me." And it stabbed through my chest all over again, because she was wrong. I always believed in her. But I wanted her to be safe, grounded, real, not a spectacle, not a tragic headline. I looked out the window at the pale, washed-out sky. Somewhere her followers were still speculating, the few who knew. Someone had posted a blurry picture of the ambulance. It was already making rounds online. I'd seen the comments. "She's faking it for content. This better be part of a bigger reveal. Where's the GoFundMe?" I shut the screen. That world, her world, hadn't even paused. It kept spinning, chewing, consuming. And I realized that maybe that silence I hated in this room was the very thing she needed most. No buzz, no clicks, no filters. Just breath, just rest, just her. I sat back in the chair, my neck stiff, eyes aching. And I made a quiet vow. If she woke up, I wouldn't fight her anymore. I wouldn't argue or beg or try to fix her through logic and warnings. I would simply see her, and I would ask her what she needed, not what I thought she should be. Because maybe all she ever wanted was to be known, not by strangers, but by me. And maybe if we both survived this, we could start again. In silence. In truth. In something real. She woke up and looked at me like a stranger. It was late afternoon. The sunlight had shifted into that golden hue that makes everything look more fragile. I was dozing off in the stiff hospital chair when I heard it. A breath sharp, sudden. Then a voice low and hoarse. "Mom." I shot upright. Emma was blinking her eyes, glassy and unfocused. Her lips were cracked, her voice barely above a whisper. I rushed to her side. "I'm here. I'm here, sweetheart. You're okay." She stared at me for a moment like she couldn't quite place where she was or who I was. Then her face tightened, not with relief, but with confusion, coldness. "Why are you here?" The words cut deeper than any scream. I blinked, thrown off. "Emma, you fell. From the bridge. You've been unconscious for 2 days." She glanced away, her face clouding. "I didn't mean to fall. I know. They probably think I did it on purpose. I don't care what they think," I said, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. "I care that you're alive." She pulled away slightly. "You reported me." I froze. She remembered. I swallowed. "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because I was terrified. You were out of control, Emma. You were hurting people. Hurting yourself. I didn't know what else to do. You ruined everything. I saved you." That shut her up. She looked away, jaw clenched. Her fingers twitched beneath the hospital blanket. I could see the war behind her eyes, pride and pain battling each other. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I didn't. Not yet. I'd pushed enough. For a long moment we sat there in silence. Then she said something I wasn't ready for. "Do you think I'm a bad person?" The question wasn't performative. It wasn't a trap. It was genuine, soft, almost childlike. I shook my head. "No, I think you're lost. And I think you've been trying to scream loud enough for someone to come find you." She didn't respond. Her eyes welled just for a second, but she blinked it away. "My followers probably think I'm dead." "They don't know you," I said gently. "Not like I do." That made her wince. And I realized then, for the first time, just how deeply she'd tangled her identity with her online presence. The fall hadn't just hurt her body. It had fractured the self-image she'd spent years constructing: the performer, the daredevil, the girl who couldn't be touched. Now she was vulnerable. Now she was seen. And she didn't know how to be that version of herself without the camera on. "I don't know who I am anymore," she admitted. I leaned forward slowly, giving her space to pull away if she needed. "Then maybe this is your chance to find out. Not for them. For you." She looked at me again. Not like I was a stranger this time, but like I was something unfamiliar and maybe necessary. She didn't say thank you. She didn't cry in my arms. She just turned her face to the window and whispered, "It's really quiet in here." "Yes," I said, "it is." And we let the silence stay. The cameras didn't come this time. There were no flashing lights, no trending hashtags, no live stream countdowns. Just the quiet hum of the hospital machines and the occasional clatter of a nurse's cart down the hallway. Emma was discharged 3 days later. No press, no selfies with her doctor, no dramatic goodbye to followers. She didn't even bring her phone. She left it at the nurse's station, said it felt like a brick in her chest. I took her home, not to the guest house, to the main house. She didn't argue. She didn't speak at all during the drive, just stared out the window. One hand loosely bandaged, the other resting in her lap, like she didn't know what to do with it now that it wasn't holding a phone. When we pulled into the driveway, she hesitated before getting out. As if stepping back into this place, the place she once mocked and fled from, might collapse, whatever fragile resolve she was clinging to. But she walked inside. The house felt different, she noticed. "I forgot what this smelled like," she murmured. "Vanilla and lemon." I smiled faintly. Your father's favorite candle. She nodded, eyes scanning the familiar details she'd once considered dull. The framed cross-stitch I made years ago, the wooden spoon still in the utensil jar, the creak in the floor near the hallway. I made soup that night. She didn't speak much, but she ate slowly, methodically, like she hadn't tasted anything real in a long time. Afterward, we sat in the living room. She didn't turn on the TV. She didn't scroll. She just sat, staring into the middle distance. I don't know what I'm supposed to do now, she said suddenly. You rest, I said. You heal. But what about my channel? My followers? My career? I hesitated. Then I said gently, what if you built something different this time? She looked at me startled. Something honest. Something that feeds you, not devours you. She was quiet. Then what if no one watches? Then at least you'll know what's real. Her face crumpled just a little. She wiped at her eyes before I could see too much. I used to think if I stopped posting, I'd disappear. You didn't, I said. You're still here. And you're more visible now than ever. We sat there in silence for a long time. No cameras, no filters, no performance. Just two women in a quiet house trying to learn how to live without pretending. That night, she didn't go back to the guest house. She asked to sleep in her old bedroom. I had never touched it. It still had the faded posters on the walls, the corkboard with old photos, the tiny bookshelf with her childhood novels. I heard her moving around slowly. Then I heard her cry, soft, muffled, honest. And I stayed downstairs because she needed space, not a lens, not an audience, just space to fall apart and rebuild, this time on her terms. She let me braid her hair again. I hadn't touched her hair in years, not since she was 16, and rolled her eyes at my mom braids, trading them in for heat tools and messy buns that looked intentional, but took an hour to style. After that, the space between us grew wider, with each year filled with slammed doors, filtered selfies, and silence. But that morning, something shifted. It had been 2 weeks since the fall, since the hospital, since everything we built and everything we lost collapsed into that one moment: a bridge, a camera, a choice, a miracle. She was healing slowly. The bruises were fading. The bandages were smaller now. She'd begun walking around the house without flinching, but she still winced when she stretched too far or turned too quickly. More than her body, it was her presence that had changed. She didn't reach for her phone when she woke up. Didn't mutter, "Where's my charger?" Didn't check her analytics over breakfast. She just sat with me. Sometimes in silence, sometimes in quiet conversation, always on her terms. That morning, she padded into the living room, barefoot, damp hair hanging in soft waves from the shower. Her face was clean, not bare in the filtered, curated way influencers say no makeup day, but truly bare. Her freckles showed again. So did the tiny scar by her eyebrow from when she fell off her bike in 2nd grade and refused stitches. She sat cross-legged on the floor in front of my chair and wordlessly handed me the brush. No eye roll, no smirk, just the brush. I reached for it slowly, like I might startle her. I began carefully brushing from the ends, first easing the knots out the way I always had. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. I could feel the slight tension in her back at first, but as the strokes grew gentler, she began to lean into them. When I was finished, I parted her hair down the middle and began weaving the braid. Left, right, over, left, right, over. The rhythm was familiar, intimate. So much had been said in the last few weeks, and yet nothing felt as honest as that braid. She tilted her head back gently and said, "You remember how to do it exactly the same." I smiled. "It's like riding a bike." She was quiet for a beat. Then, "You used to hum when you did this." I froze for a second. Then, just as softly, I began to hum the same tune I used to sing when she was little. It was something silly, something I'd made up, just a little melody I'd hum when I brushed her hair after baths or braided it before picture day. And to my surprise, her shoulders sank. She exhaled, and that exhale felt like the loosening of a knot I'd carried in my chest for years. When I finished, I gently tied the end with a soft band. Her hair fell over her shoulder like it used to, a single neat braid, imperfect and familiar. She stayed on the floor. Her voice was low when she finally said, "Do you think it's too late? For what to stop?" I blinked. Stop what? She turned around to face me, not fully, just enough for me to see her eyes. Everything she said. The channel, the posting, the lies, the noise. My heart tightened. "I thought I needed it," she said. "To matter, to feel seen. But I don't think I ever was seen. Not really. Not by them. Just consumed." I nodded slowly. "And how do you feel now, Raw?" she admitted. "Exposed. Like all that noise kept something inside me buried, and now that it's gone, it's crawling back out." I swallowed. "That something is you." She looked away, blinking hard. "I think I hated you because I thought you were small, boring, because you were quiet. But now I think I envied you." I didn't interrupt. She needed to say this. "You knew who you were?" she continued. "You didn't need a comment section to tell you. You didn't need hearts or likes or reposts to feel alive. I used to think that meant you were invisible. But now I think maybe you were just grounded." She bit her lip, then added, "And I was floating. For years. Pretending it was flying." I reached out and took her hand. For the first time, she didn't pull away. "You haven't fallen," I said. "Not really. You've landed." We sat like that for a while. Eventually, she stood up, wiped her face, and disappeared into her room. When she came out an hour later, she held her phone in both hands. She looked at me like she was about to do something irreversible. "I'm going to delete it," she said. I knew what she meant. Her entire presence. Years of content. The followers. The fame. The carefully curated persona she had stitched together like a digital skin. I didn't say anything. She sat beside me on the couch and opened the app. Her hands trembled slightly. "I thought this was me," she whispered. "But it's not. It never was." She scrolled down to the bottom, tapped settings, found delete account. A warning popped up. "Are you sure this action cannot be undone?" She hesitated. Then slowly she clicked yes. I watched as the screen flashed. The logo vanished. Her feed disappeared. The page returned to the login screen. That was it. Gone. She set the phone face down on the table, and she wept. Not loud, not performative, just soft, aching sobs that filled the room in a way no sound equipment ever could. I held her through all of it. No questions, no conditions, just presence. She cried for everything she had lost, not the followers, not the brand, but the years. The innocence. The moments she could have lived instead of filmed. The people she hurt. The lies she told. The time she couldn't get back. "I don't know who I am without it," she finally whispered. "You're Emma," I said. "And that's more than enough." She fell asleep on the couch, head on my lap. I sat there in the stillness, stroking her hair, watching the light fade from afternoon to twilight. And I realized something important. Maybe this is what healing really looks like. Not fireworks, not a big speech, not a viral redemption arc. Just this: a mother, a daughter, a braid, and the slow, quiet beginning of a story that doesn't need to be told to anyone else but the two people living it. Slow fade out. Sometimes the world tells us that being seen is everything, that if you're not loud, you're not real, that if you're not trending, you're disappearing. But some of the most powerful moments happen in silence, in forgiveness, in the choice to begin again without the camera watching. My daughter didn't just delete an app. She reclaimed her life. And in doing so, I found my daughter again. Not the brand, not the persona, just Emma, and me, her mother. Still here, still braiding her hair, still believing that love, the quiet kind, will always outlast the noise. Thank you for listening to our story. If you've ever lost someone to the noise of the world or brought them back with love, share your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if this moved, you subscribe to Grace's Truth for more powerful real stories that remind us what family healing and truth really look like.